driving to Brunswick County this morning. It's May 16th, 2022, and Tammy's opening her pottery studio today, back open again after being closed for several years. So, but I came across something about the Doolittle Raiders the other day, and thought I would recall the story of when I went to the reunion in Columbia, South Carolina. Columbia, South Carolina was important to the Doolittle Raid, being that that's where they trained to learn how to take off what's in the being on my pilot. I learned short field takeoffs is what they called it, and they learned short field takeoffs on bombers, on B-25 bombers there in Columbia, South Carolina, as the war broke out. And it was a secret mission, as you know, about attacking Tokyo and other cities in Japan. This was just a little backstory on the Doolittle Raiders, as you can read up on, but it was 80 men. I think it was about 54 of them were officers, and the rest were enlisted men. They were all volunteers. They were volunteering for a mission that they didn't know what it was about. These were B-25 bomber pilot crews that were in the Army Air Corps. There wasn't the Air Force back in those days. It was called the Army Air Corps. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, as we know, on December 7th, 1941. And it took us several months to figure out what to do in reaction to that. We declared war on Japan on December the 7th, and because a state of war existed, as it was said, from that bombing raid by the Japanese. So we needed a moral victory, because it was very demoralizing situation of having that surprise attack in Hawaii, in Honolulu against our fleet there. So in April 18th, we launched a secret mission to bomb Tokyo and other cities, and they were called the Doolittle Raiders because Lieutenant Colonel Doolittle was assigned to train the crews and to go with the crews over to bomb Japan. And so for several months after finding the volunteers, they trained the bomber crews on how much gasoline and bombs could be carried on a B-25 bomber, because they had to do a long range flight. What they did was they loaded up 2 aircraft carriers, because we didn't lose any aircraft carriers during the Pearl Harbor attack. So we took 2 aircraft carriers and 16 B-25s, which took 80 men to operate and fly those 16 bombers. And we're going to launch 400 miles out from Tokyo if we could sneak across the Pacific without being spotted, and then bomb strategic spots in Tokyo and Nagasaki and Nagashima, a couple of the other cities, in bombing industrial sites and key other sites. They didn't bomb the Imperial Palace. I don't know why they didn't. Why they didn't kill the Emperor, that's something I'd love to learn. But anyway, so the Doolittle Raid was successful. It launched 200 miles early because they spotted what's called a sampan, which is a fishing craft, a Japanese fishing craft, out that deep out in the ocean, and we were worried when that fishing vessel spotted our fleet holding the bombers. We were afraid that they would warn the mainland of Japan and let them know that we were coming. So the decision was made to launch 200 miles early. Now, they didn't have enough fuel to do the bombing raids and then do as they were planning, which is to land in China. And the Chinese would have our men go, make sure they got back to the Allied lines. A very risky mission, to say the least. Nobody was really expected to come back alive. All of the bombers were lost in the raid except for one that I believe was somehow captured by the Russians, and I believe the Russians still have in possession one of the B-25s. But anyway, it was a big morale boost, and it was a big surprise to the Japanese because they thought that there was no way that we could go that far across the Pacific and bomb the homeland of the Japanese. It just wasn't thought possible, and it really was an impossible mission. So they had every reason to believe that. But when and there's a great movie that really depicts the story very well, as I believe, called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. And if you get the opportunity to rent that movie, see that movie, I would suggest you do so, because it is a part of our history, and it is a very important part of our history because it was our first response of World War II. So it's a big part of what happened in World War II to help boost the morale of the United States, and which helped us become a better team. The country, the U.S., was now more spirited and interested in doing what they could to help the war effort. So it had far-reaching effects here, as well as demoralizing and scaring the Japanese, and that also had a very beneficial effect. So in 2003, they were having the 60th anniversary, I believe it was the 60th anniversary of the Doolittle Raid reunion, or of the Doolittle Raid. They were having a reunion in Colombia, and there were 26 surviving members of the Doolittle Raid in 2003. And of the 26 surviving people that were in the raid, 13 of them were going to the reunion in Colombia. They're rather old. And in 2017, the last Doolittle Raider died, Captain Cole, and he was 103. But in 2003, I saw that they were going to be in Columbia, and so they were selling tickets to to an event that they were going to have in the honor of the Doolittle Raiders, and I wanted to go. So the triplets at that time would have been 13 years old, I guess, and so I found out where the Doolittle Raiders were going to be staying, which was a nice hotel in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. I don't remember how I found out they were going to be there, but I did. And so I took off from Ocean Isle Beach and drove down to Columbia and got into Columbia and checked into my room about maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that night at the local auditorium was going to be a celebration of the Doolittle Raiders, a show where Lee Greenwood, if you look Lee Greenwood up, if you don't know who that is, he did a song, Proud to Be an American, which was a very popular patriotic song that was contributed to Lee Greenwood. And if you get the chance to listen to that song, it's a very good song. But when I got in and checked in, I went down to the lobby, and they had a bar down there and different couches and sitting areas and that kind of thing. And I kind of looked around to see if I could spot maybe one of the Doolittle Raiders. Well, it wasn't long before I started seeing 2 or 3 guys in blue blazers, suit jackets, and they had a patch on their pocket and maybe some medals and that kind of thing. You knew they were the Doolittle Raiders because they were supposed to be there. They were of the vintage. They were the right age, and they also were wearing their representation of military service. So I walked up to a couple of them that were in a conversation, and I said, y'all must be 2 of the Doolittle Raiders. And they said yes, and we just exchanged niceties, and I said, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you went through, if you don't mind talking about it, and may I buy you a drink? And they said, well, sure. So we sat down on a little den group looking sitting area they had there in the lobby, and I bought them whatever drinks they wanted, and so it wasn't long before another Doolittle Raider showed up and checked in and came over and sat down with us, and then so it wasn't long before maybe an hour of sitting there and plying these Raiders with libation. We started becoming friends and laughing and joking and telling stories, and they would say, no, Dave, it wasn't like that, it was like this, and somebody, so they were sparring back and forth and just having a good time, and it was really a great fellowship with the Raiders, or with the few Raiders that were there. So about 4 o'clock, I guess, or somewhere thereabouts, one of them said, we better get ready for dinner. Said, Stuart, would you like to go to dinner with us? And I said, no, man, I don't want to be, get in the way of y'all doing that. It's your time, it's your day. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just here as a spectator and as a supporter and a fan of what you did. And they said, well, why don't you go to the show with us? And I said, well, I'm not sure that's kosher either. And they said, who's going to turn us down? If we want you there, nobody's going to say anything to us about that. And I said, well, what do y'all do? How you getting there? He says, well, there's a trolley that's going to pick us up and take us to the show. Why don't you ride in the trolley with us and meet us here? And they told us the time. And I said, all right. So at about 6 o'clock that night or something like that, I go down to the lobby, and there's the Doolittle Raiders are starting to congregate, and a few of their wives that were there, getting ready, all dressed up, getting ready to go to the event, which was at an auditorium that wasn't far from the hotel in downtown Columbia. So I get on the trolley with the Doolittle Raiders, and they act as if I'm their long-lost son, and I think we had a couple of drinks waiting for the trolley, and it was a good time had by all. So I get on the trolley, and we ride over to the event, and when we get out of the trolley, there's some handlers there, and they said, go this way into this door, into the auditorium. And a couple of the wives I noticed were looking at me like, who's this guy, and why is he here with us? And but they didn't say anything, because I was pounding around with a couple of the Raiders that were very friendly to me, so they thought, well, it must be a grandson or somebody like that. They just gave me the evil eye, but they really didn't say anything. So we walk into, here I am with the Doolittle Raiders, and we walk into the auditorium, and the auditorium is full. The lights go down, a spotlight goes on us, and we wave, and we walk. We were escorted down to the front of the auditorium where the seats are reserved, and we all sit down, and there's like 4 or 5 Doolittle Raiders to one side of me, and 6 or 7 Doolittle Raiders and their wives to the right of me, and I'm in the middle there, sitting there with the Raiders. So they start the show, and everybody is wearing uniforms of the period of World War II that are performing that night. It's a show that was done in period style. So they were singing songs from that period, and they were wearing clothes of that period. So here comes out I think 3 girls that were dressed in WAC uniforms from World War II, and they were emulating the Andrews Sisters, and started singing the Andrews Sisters songs. And if you look up World War II music, you'll find the Andrews Sisters, because they sang a lot of popular songs at that time. So anyway, a good time was being had, and they were jitterbugging out on the stage and doing all of this to the show. Then about that time, after a few songs, it then comes out, Lee Greenwood comes out on stage by himself, and the music starts playing in the background. I'm proud to be an American, and he sings that song. Has no facial expression. He doesn't look at the crowd. He's looking off into space. The Doolittle Raiders is sitting right there in front of him. He makes no mention of the Doolittle Raiders or anything other than as if he was by himself. So he sings the song, and everybody cheers, and it was such a great song. And he turns around and walks back off the stage, and that was the last we see of Lee Greenwood. It was later said that he may have had a cold or something, but I thought it was a perfect opportunity for him to have said, "We appreciate your service. We appreciate what you did for your country." Nothing. It just which I've often thought about that. It was just a missed opportunity, in my opinion. But maybe he was having troubles that would factor into that. Let's just hope that was the case. I think any American would have had that was proud of what happened would have said something, but he didn't. But anyway, so so we get, after the show, we get back in the trolley, we go back to the hotel, and some of the Doolittle Raiders go up to their room. Other Doolittle Raiders, like the ones I'd gotten to know, had it stuck around and said, well, let's go have a drink. And so, and I found that pretty much as we would go to Normandy and meet the guys, the veterans from the Normandy invasion, which we've done. And I'll have to talk about that at some point. But so we sat there, and I think that the bar was open till like 1:30 in the morning. It was late, and we were drinking the whole time. And these guys were just putting away the liquor, as like I say, when we're meeting people over in France and Normandy, the veterans from America that were there, they would be putting away their liquor. They could drink me under the table. And back in 2003, I could drink along with the rest of them, but they did. I was surprised on how much liquor they could hold, and still hold well, and still talk stories. So I had pictures taken with them, and I had them all sign a book that I had brought with me about the Doolittle Raid, a picture book. I hope I still have it somewhere. But I've got those photographs that I had developed and put in the book, and all of the personalization signatures of all of the Raiders, and their comments they made to me in that book. But the next day, out at the airfield in Columbia, where they had trained, where they were having a fair, an event, a celebration of the anniversary of the Doolittle Raiders. And out there at the airfield, they had a couple of B-25s from World War II, vintage aircraft that were still able to fly. And you could pay $200 and fly for maybe 15 minutes in a B-25, and you could fly if you got on one of the planes when one of the Doolittle Raiders were riding, you'd be able to ride with them. I didn't have the $200 extra to pay it. I kind of, in reflection as the years go on, kind of wished I had the money or elected to fly with the Doolittle Raiders on a B-25. I think that would have been an exciting thing to do and a good memory to have. But anyway, I met up with my friends from the night before, the Doolittle Raiders, and so we kind of hung around together that day. And there was a stand up there where they had one of them that had Congressional Medal of Honor winner, and talked to him. But it was a good time there in Columbia, and the mayor was giving a speech, and there was all kinds of food being sold at different booths, and it was the whole town of Columbia, South Carolina, which was a fairly sizable town, seemed to have turned out for the opportunity to be able to celebrate with the Raiders. So at the fair. So by mid-afternoon, I was ready to come back to Ocean Isle Beach and come back home. So I said goodbye to the Raiders, and I've never seen them since. And of course, they didn't live very long after that, or a few years. All of them within what was it? In 14 years, all of them would be dead. they also had what was called I think it's a téton, French word. No, I was probably not saying it correctly. Where they had a bottle of wine that they had gotten after the raid, and after they'd gotten back together, and some of the raiders were able to make it into China and then get back to our lines. Others were captured by the Japanese and were killed. Others were interned by the Japanese and were later were able to leave the prisoner of war camps after the war. But it was amazing that there was by 2003 that there were still 26 living raiders from the original 80 that left those two aircraft carriers. And being that all of them crashed and all but one of the planes were lost, so it was lost to history. So it was a story I'll remember forever, and I thought it would be worthwhile to tell you about it.